Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to be taking a look at the Atom A5 SDI wireless monitor from Vaxis. Back in December 2022 I reviewed the HDMI based Atom A5 system and Vaxis asked if I'd like to have a look at the new model with SDI support. Let's start by having a look at the packaging and what you get in the box. As you can see straight away from the graphics on the front of the box, the Atom A5 SDI also features a new dual band wireless system using both 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz frequencies. The back lists a few of the main features of the device, including the dual band switching, the fact it can switch between transmitter and receiver, that it can record and playback video, and can transmit to up to 5 screens. So let's have a look inside. As with a lot of kit these days, the support information is online and Vaxis supply a card with a link and a QR code to view it. As with the other Atom A5s I reviewed previously, we also get a glass screen protector with this device as well. We'll attach that in a moment. Moving on, there's no case with this version. Inside it looks like it's just the monitor itself and an SDI cable. So let's have a look at the monitor itself. On the top we have a power button that you press once to switch the monitor on and hold to switch off. There's also two programmable function buttons. Interestingly, there's also a 1/4-20 mounting thread on the top. The right side has the SDI in and out ports as well as a full-size SD card slot. This is another difference between this and the HDMI only version, as those feature micro SD card slots. This one comes with a 32 GB SanDisk Ultra card. On the bottom we have another 1/4-20 mounting point with the anti-swivel holes. The left side has HDMI in and out ports, which is great as it means that this can also be used with cameras that don't have SDI. It also has a headphone port and a USB-C port which can be used to power the monitor. Other than the NPF battery mounts on the back, this is the only other method of powering the device. So looking at the back, you can see there's a slightly different layout to the HDMI version. Here we have both NPF battery mounts in the centre of the device on a raised section, which also has vents on the sides for a built-in cooling fan. As with the HDMI only version, this monitor appears to be primarily made of a composite or plastic material, however it does feel solid. The monitor without batteries weighs in at only 348 grams. I'm going to start by attaching the screen protector before the screen gets covered in fingerprints and dust. There's a removable film on one side of the protector and one on the screen itself. I'll start by peeling off the one on the screen and then the one on the back of the protector. Then what I like to do is line up the long edge of the protector with the long edge of the screen, making sure it's central. I try to grip the edges of the screen so as not to put my fingers against the back side of the glass. Once it's all lined up, I lower the protector into place, and then all you need to do is push down on part of the protector and watch it magically attach itself to the screen. If you get any air trapped around the edges, you can normally push those out, but it looks like I've been lucky this time and this one's gone on without any problems. I thought it might be useful to show the SDI version next to the HDMI only version and highlight the differences. You can see that the SDI version is a little thicker and has a slightly grippier surface. From the front they look very similar other than the updated dual band antennas and the logo visible on the SDI version. The new antennas are still removable and use the same connector as the non-SDI version. The right side shows a different layout to accommodate the SDI ports and the larger SD card slot. Over on the left side the HDMI ports and the headphone out are in the same place, however the DC power connector is replaced here with a USB-C connector. And the base is similar too, other than the SDI version has the extended back and airflow slots for the fan. Finally you can see the difference between the NPF mount setup on the back. I fitted the Vaxis cage and sun hood on my Atom A5s. I like the way the sun hood can be folded up for storage and then opened up when it's ready to be used. As you can see, the cage includes NATO rails left and right with locks at the top. These are useful if you want to add handles or say a follow focus unit. Unfortunately the cage for the HDMI only version won't fit on the SDI version, but Vaxis assure me they'll be coming out with one that will fit that version soon. So let's get this hooked up to a camera. First I'll connect the SDI cable to the camera and I'm going to power the monitor with a DTAP to MPF adapter. I'll connect the SDI cable to the SDI in on the monitor and power on the camera. Today I'm using this lovely Kinefinity Mavo Edge 8K that belongs to my buddy Peter Naylor. Once hooked up, the monitor takes around 25 to 30 seconds to boot up. I feel the screen looks nicer than the HDMI only version of the Atom A5s. It seems a little more contrasty and certainly brighter. Vaxis lists the peak brightness of the A5 SDI as 2000 nits, double that of the previous HDMI only version. I tested them both on a sunny day, and while the SDI version is certainly brighter than the previous version, I also tested it beside the 2000 nit Portkeys LH5P2, and while they are close, I still think the Portkeys is a little brighter. The coloured ring icon brings up the LUT menu. In here you can quickly toggle a LUT on and off, as well as import LUTs into the provided slots. I'm not going to go through that process again here, but if you do want to see that happening, then watch my review of the HDMI version of the Atom A5. So looking at the system settings, firstly we have the display settings where you can adjust brightness, contrast, saturation and sharpness. Then in the RGB settings you can dial in the colour of the monitor to your liking with controls over RGB gain and RGB offset. In the setting menu you can set scan mode, headphone volume, backlight brightness, and new for the SDI version, fan speed. As the HDMI version doesn't have a fan, this wasn't needed there. You can see we have an auto setting which turns on the fan when required, or you can totally switch the fan off or have it permanently running on a low or high setting. I do find the fan noise to be a little intrusive. In the low setting it's not particularly loud, but it does have a high-pitched whining sound to it, which could affect an onboard mic. The high setting is louder still, so you'd likely want to only use that between shots to cool down the monitor. You can, however, switch the fan off altogether, and I didn't find that the monitor gets particularly hot, but that's obviously dependent on ambient conditions. The function menu lets you choose which functions to apply to the two buttons on top of the monitor. I'm going to set function 1 to zebra and function 2 to waveform. Then you can easily turn on and off the set functions using these buttons. Finally, there's the system settings where you can set the language, view the current firmware version, initiate an update from the SD card, perform a factory reset, and view the About Us information. Along the bottom of the screen, you can see audio levels, the currently selected input, whether the monitor is in transmit or receive mode, signal strength, the wireless channel, and the video specs. The other unusual feature of this monitor is its ability to record. First off, it's important to realise that you don't get anything close to the kind of recording quality you might get from something like an Atomos Ninja 5 or from a camera's internal recording, as the files are recorded in HD with a very low bitrate of around 8.4 megabits per second. However, the ability to record does give you some advantages. Having these low bitrate files recorded in the monitor gives you the ability to quickly review a shot without having to put the camera into playback mode. And if you have a director viewing a second monitor, they too have the ability to review shots without having to ask the camera operator to find and play back a specific shot. Here's an example of a recording direct from the Atom A5 SDI. This was sent out from the Mavo Edge with the LUT applied. Considering this is recorded in HD and upscaled to 4K, I think they look pretty good. However, you can of course see the difference between the low bitrate recording from the monitor and the camera's recording. Once exported for YouTube, the difference becomes less obvious, so depending on what you're delivering, it can actually give you an emergency backup, but a low bitrate HD file isn't ideal for colour grading or high-end post-production. You might be thinking that this could also be good to use as proxies, but I wouldn't recommend that because the monitor starts recording around a second later than the camera and then stops recording around half a second after the camera stops. These differences in the two recorded versions will cause problems for editors and would likely not work with many NLEs given the files are different lengths. Another handy thing for YouTube creators is that it also allows you to switch on HDMI info and record the camera's menu system instead of having to film the back of the camera. As with the HDMI only version, there's still no way to set the time and date on this version, which is frustrating if using the recorded clips as they are all dated 1st of January 2098 with no timestamp. You can, however, change the name of the files on each monitor. Pressing the play icon brings up the playback menu, where you can cycle between the recorded clips to review. Pressing the three dots on the left allows you to view a list of the recorded clips and choose one to play. I'll give you a quick run through of the main tools available on the monitor. So first we have the scope section. In here you'll find waveform, RGB waveform, histogram and vector scope. You can display all at the same time, however you have to choose between the regular waveform or the RGB waveform. You can't display both at the same time. Next we'll move on to the still oddly named photos section, which contains various matte options as well as the ability to define a custom matte. You can show a safe area guide and choose between various anamorphic de-squeeze options. Unfortunately, the same problem I found with the HDMI version of the monitor still persists here, in that if you're using an anamorphic de-squeeze and then try to use some of the exposure tools, the anamorphic setting will switch off. I'm surprised this hasn't been addressed yet, as it makes this device a really bad choice if you plan on shooting with anamorphic lenses and want to use the built-in exposure tools. We've also got the option to display a center cross as well as the ability to display a grid. The grid is quite limited, it only has the option of 3x3 and doesn't adjust for any other settings. Moving on to the focusing tools, we have peaking with control over colour and sensitivity. We also have a 2-finger zoom punch, which does work well. Then we have zebras and false colour, which really shouldn't be in the focus section at all, as these are exposure tools. The zebras are pretty basic, with just one level displayed, with a minimum and maximum option that only goes up to 100%. The zebras work, but they are quite lacking in options, and if you're using a gamma curve that can handle brightness above 100%, then these likely won't work for you. The false colour seems to work well though, and we also have an option for monochrome in a few different colours. The colour section is a bit of a weird one. I'm not sure why the monitor needs the ability to switch between different white balance options, and pressing these actually seems to make little difference. There is however an option here for HDR shooting, with modes for PQ and HLG. Now I don't shoot HDR, so I haven't tested these out, so let me know in the comments below if you do try this and how it works for you. The last feature section is signal, and this is where we can talk about the wireless video features. In the mode settings you can choose to have the device as a transmitter or a receiver. If it's a transmitter, then there's 3 options for mode: speed, normal or quality. I took the monitors out for a test and found that I could reach around 100 meters with line of sight between the two devices before the signal started to break up. I wasn't sure if these 3 mode options affected the range, but changing between them certainly didn't seem to change the point at which I would lose signal, so I don't think they do. Now Vaxis lists a 300 meter range with the new monitor, but that might be between 2 of the new dual band devices. I'm using mine with the older receivers and I'm not sure if that affects the range. As with the HDMI only Atom A5, when the signal is lost, the receiver monitor still freezes on the last frame shown, which isn't ideal as the viewer may not realise the signal's been lost. It would be much better if the monitor displayed the fact that the signal has been lost. The input section allows you to choose between the HDMI and SDI inputs, and also allows you to choose how you want the internal recording to sync with the camera. Manual is just that. The monitor ignores the camera and only records when the record button is pressed on the screen. As you can see, this doesn't trigger the receivers to record either. The HDMI option starts and stops the transmitter and receivers recording in sync with the camera. This also seems to apply when using SDI, so this option isn't really labelled correctly. Now if I start recording on the camera, the Atom A5 starts recording and it also triggers the receivers to start recording as well. Whether or not you need to use the low bitrate HD recordings on the monitors, I'm a big fan of the monitor's ability to show when the camera is recording. In this mode, if you press the screen to trigger a manual recording, it'll throw up an error. The third option is for timecode. I tried sending timecode, but I couldn't get the recording to respond, so I'm not sure why that was the case. Let me know if you guys have more luck. I also tested the HDMI input using my FX3. What I've done here is just set up both HDMI only Atom A5s in the background as receivers. I switched the transmitter on first, followed immediately by the receivers. Let's see how long it takes for the complete system to be up and running. As you can see, it's taken 27 seconds for the transmitter to boot. Now we're just waiting for the receivers. Okay, so it took another 20 seconds for those to be ready, making the total startup time for the system around 47 seconds. Jumping back into the signal menu, the next sections allow you to set up the wireless options and pair devices. Pairing Atom devices is straightforward. All you need to do is go to the wireless page on each device and press the pairing button on each one. I tested this and it took around 45 seconds for all three devices to pair. Once paired, you can change channel on all devices by selecting a channel on the transmitter, and you can see the receivers pause while they are switching over, and then the video will resume once they've changed. I'll change it back to channel 0 for now. The receivers now have the ability to scan for available transmitters. Simply press the scan button, and after a few seconds the receiver will show which channels are in use, allowing you to connect to any of the available transmitters. Next, I wanted to test latency with the system. I went through each of the mode settings to see what effect they have on latency, starting with the speed setting. Pausing it here, you can see that the receivers are around 1300ths or 130 milliseconds behind the transmitter. Next, I switch to normal mode and do the same. Pausing again shows a result of 140 milliseconds. And finally, I switch to quality mode. This time it's showing the receiver to be 1600ths or 160 milliseconds behind the transmitter. It's worth saying that using my iPhone like this isn't the most scientific method, it's really just a rough guide. As well as working with other Atom devices, the A5 SDI can also transmit to iOS and Android devices. The box says it can connect to up to 5 in total, but I'm just going to try it with my iPhone. Connecting is easy. You just launch the Vaxis app and press connect to device. I'm going to use the QR code method, and all you have to do is point the device's camera at the QR code displayed on the wireless settings page. With that done, you press join and you just have to wait a few seconds for it to connect. The app works well and has some built-in tools, including peaking and zebras. While the iPhone doesn't record in sync with the Atom devices, you can actually record stills or video direct on the app. I show all of the features and options within the Vaxis Vision app in my previous Atom A5 review, so if you need more detail on how that works, then check out that video, which is linked below in the description. To sum up, I think it's great that the Atom A5 now includes SDI support, meaning it can also be used with higher end cameras. And also, the increase in screen brightness to 2000 nits is very much welcomed, especially for shooting outside on sunny days. The Atom A5 remains a great option for keeping a rig compact while still providing a wireless video system. Vaxis tell me the new A5 SDI monitor is going to cost $529, which is actually very close to the current HDMI only version. So my advice would be, if you're looking for one of these, then definitely keep an eye out for the SDI version, because for only a few dollars more it's definitely worth having the ability to use SDI, as well as the other improvements that I've listed in this video. Now, you're not going to get the longest range or the lowest latency available out there. You can buy systems from Vaxis and other manufacturers with zero latency and much longer range. But it's a fairly low budget piece of equipment that includes monitoring tools and the ability to record. I think this makes great sense for anybody looking to have wireless video on a lower budget. I would recommend checking out the Atom A5 SDI. My only hesitation would be for anybody looking to shoot anamorphic, given the A5's continued inability to use D-squeeze and scopes at the same time. So I think I'll call it there for this review. I hope that was useful. If you have any questions, then please leave a comment. I do try to reply to every question I get, and I will gladly help if I can. Thanks loads for watching, and I will see you in the next one.